Richard Tice went on Politics Joe to talk about your energy bills. He's concerned. He has a plan. And buried in the same interview is the admission that he supports the war causing the energy crisis that he's complaining about. Now, Politics Joe does what Politics Joe does. And in this format, it's a vox pop. Someone puts a microphone in front of you, asks you what you think, and then just moves on. There's no real follow-up, maybe the odd question here or there. No second question that really digs deep into it. No interviewers waiting to say, but you just said the opposite of that 30 seconds ago. And Tice knows this. He's performing for a format that rewards confidence, not necessarily coherence. Say it with enough certainty, keep moving, and most people won't go back and actually listen to what you said. So we're going to do that. We're going to listen to what he said.
Could it not?
No, it says exactly the opposite. It's literally doing exactly the opposite.
That is Richard Tice being asked whether net zero could reduce our resilience on volatile international energy markets. Not just wrong, he says, exactly the opposite. His argument is this. If you produce your own oil and gas domestically, like the Americans, then you're insulated from the global price shocks. Net zero keeps you dependent on imported gas during the transition, and that dependency is what leaves you exposed. More drilling, less net zero, be like the US. Now, it sounds reasonable, I suppose, but it also happens to be the opposite of how energy actually works. The thing about solar panels and offshore wind is that they're British. The wind crossing the North Sea doesn't have an internationally traded spot price. It doesn't spike when there's a war in the Middle East. You build the infrastructure once, generate the electricity, and the only remaining costs are you running the kit that you've already built. That's the entire point of moving away from fossil fuels, to get off the fuel with a globally set price that you cannot control. Drilling more oil and gas doesn't fix that, it just deepens it. And Tice half acknowledges this, which leads to one of the most stranger moments in the interview, the kind you only watch if you're actually listening.
This great myth, this great lie, there's an international price of gas, that is simply not the case.
A great myth, a great lie, no international price of gas. And then, in the same breath, he tells you that the US gas prices are 10% lower than before the war, while UK prices are 30% higher, because of their respective positions in the international market.
And the US gas price is 10% lower than it was at the start of the war. Ours, 30% higher, because we're exposed internationally.
Two countries, different prices, driven by the different levels of exposure to a globally connected market. The one he just said that doesn't exist. So, he's not just wrong, he's using evidence that only makes sense if the thing he's calling a myth is real. He's so confident you're not going to notice that he doesn't even bother to notice himself.
What about if we use our own domestic gas, like they do in the US?
America. He comes back to it twice. Produce your own gas, protect yourself from shocks, prices go down. That's the blueprint. The Centre of America Progress published an analysis noting that despite record levels of domestic US production, American prices are more exposed than ever to global fuel interruptions. US gas prices went $4 to a gallon after the Iran conflict escalated, up more than $1 a gallon in weeks. The world's largest oil producer didn't drill its way to insulation because the oil market is global, the great myth that isn't a myth. And then he goes and undermines his entire argument with the war.
The reality is this dreadful Iranian regime, they're the people that are responsible for the price hikes.
I mean, he's right. Disruption to shipping through the Strait of Hormuz alone took roughly 20% of global oil supply off the market. European gas benchmarks nearly doubled. The International Energy Agency described it as the greatest global energy security challenge in history. The IMF identified Britain as one of the most hardest hits, specifically because we import so much of our gas and our oil, dependency Tice is complaining about. So the interviewer asks him, you said that UK should support this war. Do you regret it?
One of the reasons for the oil price spike is because of the US war in Iran, which you said that the UK should support. Do you regret that now?
Far from it.
Far from it. The Iranian regime are responsible, he said. We should have been allowed to use our bases. When Operation Epic Fury began, Tice doubled down in Parliament, demanding to know whether Britain had refused the Americans again, praising the US and Israel for acting to, in his words, protect us all in the West by destroying the dangerous Iranian regime. He called the energy price consequences of a short-term bump. European gas had nearly doubled by that point. If you Finding this useful, subscribing is the most effective thing you can do, by the way. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that like button, that'd be great. Okay, so back to the Politics Joe interview. He's campaigning for a fuel duty freeze and he's asked how he would fund it. Here's your answer.
Would it be through a windfall tax on oil?
If you scrap daft things like net stupid zero, scrap loads of unnecessary quangos, cut out masses of waste in, for example, the welfare bill. There's so much waste everywhere. Driving is absolutely potty.
Net stupid zero. That's the solution to the energy crisis caused by geopolitical instability and fossil fuel markets. Here we go, I'm going to completely butcher this name. The Bruegel Institute. It's an economic think tank, not a green campaign group, published an analysis immediately after the conflict began, stating that Europe's vulnerability to these shocks remained rooted in its continued reliance on imported fossil fuels traded on volatile global markets. And that's only by reducing structural dependence on oil and gas imports can Europe shield itself from recurrent external shocks. That's the pro-net zero argument, the one Tice wants to scrap. And the evidence he uses to argue against it is the evidence for it. Still with me? Good. He got away with it in this format because it's the microphone in, talking points out, microphone gone. Nobody stopped him, nobody played his previous clip back to him. That's the job of the Vox Pop. You get your take and you move on. But if you actually stop and listen to what he actually said, it doesn't survive contact with itself. He blamed the crisis on a war he supports. He proposed a solution that deepens the problem he's describing. He cited a country whose prices have since collapsed, and he declared a global market a myth while pointing to evidence of a global market. Richard Tice is Reform's UK spokesperson for business, trade and energy. This is the specialist. This is the man with the plan. He probably just thought he wasn't paying attention. And to see Richard Tice getting rattled when he's asked about his tax affairs, you'll need to watch the video that's on screen now.